Yeah. So we are a blockchain-based electronic invoicing network service provider. What we are trying to do is to automate tax reporting service and working capital financing for MSMEs.
Hey, Surya, one thing that I want to do, if you can see my screen, under resources, right here where we have applications and products, I want to put together, no, no, not you, Siri. I want to put together a directory of blockchain applications, right? And so so let's talk, if anybody has a blockchain application they'd like to get listed in our directory, I'd like to get this directory filled with applications and products and then promoted out to the global community. So
Okay.
let's talk about that either after the call or maybe tomorrow. Stefano, would you like to share a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
I've been in the technology industry for about 30 plus years, building a new company. And the company is blockchain AI ecosystem that's managed by blockchain. Feedback. And the organization is aiming at the American US apprenticeship program, elevating the delivery of new talent in blockchain, AI, and top skills for the United States rapid skill development. Hoping to eventually partner with you guys, and I'm glad I'm being invited to this. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the session.
Yeah, Stefano, how'd you find out about this?
Gerald, it's the I've met with you guys before. I used to run a program called Nose Labs. I was the Chief Innovation Officer working with Matthew Merchadieu. I think you met Matthew.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew used to run the Florida Blockchain Association here in South Florida. In 2018, we launched a very large blockchain event called Blockchain Shift Miami. We were about 7,000 people. The whole thing kind of took a dive and cooled down. And now I'm building my own company with Nosphere Architecture and trying to bring the apprenticeship program moving forward. It requires identity, it requires blockchain contracts, and requires a whole bunch of ingenuity to be able to launch. The program is designed and managed by the Department of Labor and Department of Education to accelerate skills and development in the United States.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, please put your contact information in, and if anybody would like to connect with you, please do. Anybody else want to share who they are, what they're doing before we get started?
Hey, Gerard. Good to hear your voice. Torben Anderson. Hey.
Yeah. From down under. What time is it there right now?
Oh, yeah. So we've got offices in Australia and in the UK and in California. I'm based in California.
Oh,
so
okay. I thought you were in Australia.
Yeah, my co-founder is in Australia, and we cover those three regions. But yeah, we're a blockchain consulting and software engineering business. We love working with government and enterprise. And yeah, our heart is for learning and bringing people up. I heard somebody talking about apprenticeship, but we're also involved in building some products around financial services, and particularly some recent work around blockchain impacting, the ability for people to vote, but also in the infrastructure of a city. So yeah, really excited to be on here today.
Yeah, you do a lot of stuff with sort of decision science and a GBA member as well. So that's awesome. Silvio, do you have to get off at 6:30, or are you going to be able to multitask?
No, it's our first time here on the board. It's just I guess they're just presenting board updates, so it seems that we'll be okay. That I don't have to jump off at 6:30. I was backwards. They started at 5:30.
Oh, okay. So do you want to go towards the end so it's easier for you to sort of?
Sure. Yeah. That could work.
So let's do this. Let's our panelists tonight is Joshua, Ingrid, Silvio. I've asked Mike Novak if he'd like to share some stuff. We've got a bunch of people on the panel, and these things are discussions, right? So what we normally do is we have folks sort of kind of lead the conversation, do some opening statements, and just kind of get us on the same page. And then we just kind of open it up for people to share their thoughts and ideas. And it just turns out into just a great sort of networking session. So with that, Ingrid, let me ask you to go first, followed by Joshua, and then Silvio, and then Mike, if you'd like to, just sort of threw Mike under the bus. So if you'd like to share any thoughts, I'd like to do that. So let's do this. Let's start with an introduction. You guys can tell them about you much better than I can. So let's just introduction first. And then once you do the introduction, then I'll ask you to make opening statements, and then we'll go into questions and answers. So Ingrid, there's so much I could say about you, but I would miss 30% of it. So by all means, please let the folks know who you are.
Well, the one thing that's relevant today is that I'm the Chief Ethics Officer for the GBA, and I've really enjoyed the time together, and the team we have has been an amazing experience for me, rewarding not only professionally, but also on a personal level. It seems every day we make new friends. Today, our focus is smart cities. So go ahead.
Can I share one thing about that? Today, or actually just recently, but today we finalized the meeting. The Embassy of Bahrain is reaching out to us to find out how can GBA help the entire country of Bahrain with their digital transformation. So we have a meeting at the ambassador's house next week, and so this idea of we're getting new friends all the time, and the connections you've brought through the WBAF, right? Just global leaders, the people you have on your board. I mean, it's just incredible. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just reminded me of that.
No, it's great. It's great. It's good. So when we talk about smart cities, as some of you might know or not, one of my special interests is digital identity. And I do believe that it's an important foundational element of smart cities. But I've also become interested in smart cities from a healthcare and life sciences angle, because I work a lot with genomics and precision medicine. So I would say those are my two major interests. However, given my ethics role, I do believe, and I've pushed very hard on a global level whenever I have the opportunity to sit in any committee, to emphasize that we'll need very good global data governance if we start to build smart cities. Everybody's focused only on technology and forgets that governance will be important too. And special passion is also to encourage everybody to use design thinking so that you can involve all stakeholders, because if we don't, we'll make the same mistakes like have occurred with other technologies in the past. So that being said, I wanted to share just a few slides that Sylvia and me used when we did another presentation together on smart cities that was very well received. It was for the Arab Emirates, a team, and it focuses on the impact of fintech on smart cities. And after digital identity, I think fintech is obviously very important as well. So is that okay if I share a few slides real quick? It wouldn't take more than 10 minutes. I can go really fast.
Let me just do introductions first, and then we'll come back and
okay, perfect. Very good. Thank you.
I dropped into the chat the blockchain ethical design framework that you and the healthcare team put together. It's a report, and so if you're interested in that, by all means, please download it. I think you can just download it right there. Yeah. All right, Sylvia, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, guys. I'm Silvio. I'm the director for Florida and Latin America, overseeing a lot of our projects and operations and expansion here. On the board of some executive leadership of GBA, and a proud elector of the GBA DAO, the government governance decentralized autonomous organization, which is one of the really exciting and I think breakthrough types of projects where GBA is taking a big lead around the world. Also one of the co-developers along with the Florida Blockchain Foundation, Florida on the smart city projects here in Miami, the Beta City project, on the board of the mayor here for global competitiveness for the city of Miami. And my day job is as an impact investor at large, both developing new companies, funding, raising funds, dedicated investment funds for impact investment, as well as funding directly for some projects and developments. We're actively looking into DeFi and innovative new financing vehicles and mechanisms that can help us finance smart cities, which is, I think, a little bit about what we're going to be talking about in this most relevant today, as one of the main challenges that are faced by smart cities around the world are these financing solutions, which being on the ground here and developing our own, we have a keen understanding of those difficulties. Anyway, very proud to be and honored to be part of this conversation today. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you, Silvio. In fact, Silvio is a Renaissance man. He's in everything from martial arts to just his philanthropic, tremendous philanthropic. He also leads GBA Miami, GBA South America, GBA Florida, and he's been instrumental in the growth of GBA from the very beginning. Another leader that we have in the space is Joshua Armand. Joshua has been with us for a long time. Joshua is also the AI lead. And Joshua, I think I did share with you and the rest of the team that Oki Mek, he is the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer for Health and Human Services Administration. He's going to be leading our AI and government effort. So, but this entire event was Joshua's idea. And Joshua, we appreciate you so much. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll come back for
Yeah, sure. So it's a pleasure connecting with you all today. So, basically right now I lead the AI working group, and what we're looking to do is actually apply AI with certain projects. One of the main projects we're looking at is a healthcare blockchain delivery protocol, and then also other blockchain projects curated by the GBA. And through that, we can integrate AI and embed it into the blockchain and integrate it as a, end-to-end solution for use cases around digital identity with healthcare, or even with just being able to create government services and fulfillment opportunities with automation and AI giving insights on predictions. So really excited to do that. And then outside of that, my company is Wiase Research Institute, where I'm the chief data scientist. And basically, we're a firm that focuses on bringing the concept of smart cities to urban communities. So what we're focused on doing is essentially empowering nonprofits, governments, and corporations with tech-enabled solutions and helping them build their own data source through that solution so that we can help them make better decisions. At the same time, making people in these communities, specifically in the urban community, have more cognitive improvement in their skills without being drained from the current technology they consume. Like a lot of people in urban communities use social media and other types of apps that they just consume content, where they can now be exposed to apps and other types of technology to increase their cognitive skills, to make them, upskill, participate in the modern workforce. And as digital transformation happen, these underrepresented communities are not left out of that process.
Awesome. So listen, we've got a couple other folks I'd like a quick introduction of. Mark Wasser, you want to just talk a little bit about who you are and what's going on with our favorite topic. Juan, if you don't mind talking a little bit about what's going on with the International Trade Working Group. Robert, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about what's going on with the GBA working groups and PMO. And Jorg and Angelica, you want to just say a little bit about what you guys are doing. So I know this is a lot of introductions, but I want you guys to know the different people that are on the call so you can reach out to them directly if you've got an interest in international trade or any of these subjects. So Mark, I don't really remember the order I said. Mark, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I'm Mark Wasser. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the GBA. My background before blockchain was artificial intelligence. In particular, I was very heavily into the ethics of artificial intelligence. I've got a decent background as a data scientist. I've done some work with smart cities with Hall Labs out of Provo, Utah, and they have a number of really interesting concepts for smart cities and devices for smart cities. They were one of the preeminent builders of smart toilets, for example, and also cube dwellings and things of that sort, things that can be rearranged in smart cities. So I sort of have seen a lot of the ideas behind smart cities. I've also heard a lot of the cautionary tales.
Awesome. Juan, you want to just say hi and what you guys are doing with the with your group? And I do realize it's late, so I'm going to try to let you get through this quick.
Well, hello everybody. I didn't want to. Okay, so my name is Juan Cabrera. I'm part of the GBA UK team. I've also been involved in smart cities for quite a few years, as my background is also with electronics IoT. In fact, I was involved 2019 with a global control management system company where I got to understand the how it works, the devices, and so on and so on. As Gerard mentioned, I'm leading the International Trade Working Group. I'm expecting to launch hopefully next month, and I invite everybody to is welcome to join. I also left all my details in the chat, and very happy to connect.
Excellent. And Juan's also working very heavily with the UK chapter and GBA Europe as well. Jorgen and Angelica, you want to just say a quick minute or two about what you guys are doing in your background and maybe the report you're working on?
Yes, of course. So yeah, we are working for the GBA as a German chapter lead, and we are members of the European board for GBA. So I'm leading the education group and the cybersecurity group. So our focus is, and our background is, we are in consulting and education. So we started the first master diploma course in blockchain and associated technologies. Especially, we are also deep in the topic of smart cities, of course, from the technology point and from a conceptual point. That's why I'm a member of the Barcelona Smart City Expo conference. And yes, and yeah, with Gerard knows we work a lot of time here and we had a lot of fun. Also, we are in the text group together and working on the report on cryptocurrencies in Texas, an overview report, which is showing out how the state of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, and the knowledge and the adoption in the world is actually. So this is an amazing report I do with some colleagues from GBA. And yes, that's what we're doing. So maybe it is an odd.
Sorry about that.
Education group.
Yeah, it's an incredible report, and I wish we had time to tell you about it. Rob, you want to just talk a little bit about who you are and what these GBA working groups are all about?
Yeah, sure, I can jump in here. It's great to see all these familiar names and faces and everybody coming in for this. I'm excited for this topic as well. So I'm Robert Perry. I work with Gerard as the director of the PMO for the working groups. A lot has been changing over the last year or so. So we are actually implementing a new structure, both for chapters and for working groups, as far as how they come on board and sponsorship levels. Now when people come on board, they can actually sponsor individual working groups, and we're going to be setting aside some of those funds for the working groups themselves. So one of the big efforts that I'm cycling through right now is getting in touch with the working group managers who can meet with our groups and decide what kind of regulations and rules they want to set around how the money and sponsorship is spent when a group does get funded, what kind of options are available to them, and get them involved in creating some new content. We actually have some really great flagship projects that are driving forward right now with the GBBP and the GBA DAO and some of these other associated projects, but we're always looking for more content and more opportunities to post both blog posts or panels or discussions like this on the calendar that Gerard has up right now. We're actually going to be setting up a filter for the working groups so that we can actually put these on here with some tags and actually start listing out when the different working groups are meeting and make it more available to the users in the chapters and the working groups to jump in on these. So a lot's going on, some exciting things, including that new funding element.
That's awesome.
and opportunities. Did you mention earlier, Gerard, we also have governments jumping on board?
Yeah, that's right. We've got several governments that are actually joining as government entities. So there's so much I wish I could tell you. We just don't have time to do it. We got to get into the smart city thing. So with that, Rob, thank you so much. The rest of you guys, I wish I could introduce all of you, but I got to kind of move on. So Mike, when I bring it over to you, just do your intro and your opening remarks together. So Ingrid, why don't you go ahead and get started, or if you and Sylvia want to do it together, by all means, you can share your screen. Oh, let me stop sharing.
Well, I think we each focus on a little bit different aspect. Sylvia has a very important part that usually shares about funding mechanisms, which is essential, but I can start, and then I think he has another set of slides.
Okay.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, indeed, I can.
Okay. So just real quick, everybody on this group kind of knows what smart cities are, so I don't have to emphasize a lot of them, but usually I like to point out that the global fintech market, of course, is very strong and is expected to grow. And it's in a very nice harmony with the global smart cities market. So I think we'll see a lot of interaction over the next few years. I want to also highlight, usually if we look up definitions of smart cities, we find multiple definitions across entities. And I always think it's important to decide when we talk about smart cities, what are we actually referring to, because otherwise we can talk across each other. Of course, the value prop, all of us know, the tremendous business opportunities. These are some of the characteristics that I usually focus on when I talk about smart cities, and it's a good way to start a conversation. The funding mechanisms I'm not gonna cover because Sylvia's gonna do that much better. And then what I'm gonna love to just emphasize is why I think that digital identity is so important. And this morning we had the digital identity web workshop also and the roundtable. So it was very, very interesting to hear all the insights from fantastic speakers about where digital identity in payments goes. So that's just one component of smart cities. Same, like we talked about smart cities, I do believe it's important to highlight what digital identity actually means. And many times people forget that are not as maybe deep as us into digital identity, that it's person, organization, application, and device, and all the formats. So I think we all can do an increased effort to emphasize to many others that talk about digital identity that they need to take all these elements into consideration, because I attend a lot of events where not many people are aware of that. These are pretty self-explanatory items, but what I usually like to highlight is that I do believe we need to spend a lot of effort internationally on interoperability and data exchanges. I also think that as we grow over the next few years in these efforts, cross-border validity and reciprocity will become an issue. And as we've mentioned many times, self-sovereign identity management is something very near and dear to my heart from an ethics perspective. And I do believe the last time I had the opportunity to talk at the European Union, there was a whole section dedicated to digital twins and how could digital twins for finance, for health, for legal purposes maybe be helpful. Specifically for healthcare and life sciences, it seems to have a lot of traction, but we'll see where that evolves. The stats are pretty staggering. I think everybody knows that the expectation is, if nothing else catastrophic happens like another pandemic, we expect a very high % of the population to live in urban areas, and 1.1 billion people per the latest reports, which are already only a year old or by now, show that 1.1 billion people do not have any digital identity. And then 1 in 4 children under 5 years old do not officially exist from an identity perspective. And that's only what we know about. And then so now we'll focus a lot on the fintech part. As all of you know, we need to focus also on portability. I do believe that digital identity can be an enabler, an enhancer, a connector, and a gateway when we build smart cities. And each of these roles will need the appropriate governance like we talked at the beginning. I also have given a few talks on digital identity and the interaction with human rights, particularly in a public health pandemic kind of environment. It has become actually more prominent than I ever thought it would be. I also feel that digital identity can be a great conduit to accelerate our quest to improve the SDG, specifically a few of them, but I think overall it can actually help with achieving all 17 SDGs. And an older passion of mine is education. I also think that digital identity can actually improve access to education. These are some of the impact domains that have been identified as high value and that have been growing consistently per the latest published reports. I think all of us on this group are very much aware there are more than these, but these are the ones that consistently, regardless of the publication, are indicated as on a very high rise and expected to further grow. When we look at elements of success, definitely multi-channel approach, stakeholder consortiums that can assist with all these elements that we described, a hybrid deployment of emerging tech, which I know we're all on this group very much familiar with, are usually by any publication identified as key drivers of success. And then the barriers, I don't think we need to emphasize because we're all very much aware we deal with them every single day, but definitely resistance to change, regulatory barriers and burdens, socioeconomic discrepancies across markets and industries are very significant. What are some of the drivers of adoption? Of course, the demographic subsets that will in the next 5 years become a very strong component of the digital economy can also drive this. Banks, governments, and tech companies, of course, are identified as key stakeholders in this ecosystem. And then some of the hot topics, and again, the event this morning touched on a lot of these, are privacy, interoperability, biometrics, regulations, right? And then the issue that's very hot right now due to the pandemic are digital identity passports. So I think that's gonna be one of the domains that we definitely will have to deal with this year and next year at least. And then future directions, I do believe that there is a chance that we're moving towards digital identity as a service and that digital identity will be a crux of the digital economy. And as our event this morning also highlighted, it seems all major payment providers in the world and banks seem to have realized that as well. And that's it. I talked as fast as I could. I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I appreciate the opportunity to share some of these highlights really quick. I know this group is very familiar with it. Thank you.
Awesome. So once we get through everyone's opening statements, I'm going to come back and ask you about some specific questions and examples about many of that stuff. Silvio, you want to share with us any opening thoughts or comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important to understand that one of the largest challenges that we have for smart cities is financing, and then how we can be able to implement financing solutions to them tends to be a big fear in order to get adoption. Oftentimes, especially the people that are part of this call, you guys are so ahead in terms of technology. Oh, look, I see Jason Nagy there. You guys are so advanced in terms of technology. We're having deep technology conversations with blockchain, and when it comes to talking to government officials, it is simply far too ahead. We need to keep that conversation on a smart city level and on a cybersecurity level, and I think that would be able to resonate a lot more to getting adoption. and really just being able to aggregate the pipeline of smart city projects that are happening in the US and anywhere around the world. We'd love to support that and have a lot of ways to be able to create innovative financing solutions. If you're in the, if you want to do a US smart city project, we have one methods around that. And if you are overseas in another country outside of the US, there are even more possibilities for financing smart cities overseas because of foreign direct investment opportunities and of course things like overseas private investment company, which is now DFC, in order to do this. But it really is a matter of national security for us to consider some of this. Our project, for example, here in Florida, would be the first digitization of ports in the entire country. And if you are paying attention to what's happening around the world, things like China's One Belt, One Road project is getting really ahead of the game. And there's not really a response or a collective response to be able to do this. This is, I think, the closest in that direction to be able to implement a real game plan that we feel could be replicated both in other GBA memberships around the world, and more importantly here with other main ports that are in the US. So, I think if you want to learn more about that, you should check out Smart Florida. That's smart, SMARTFL.org. If you want to learn more about impact financing and solutions and you have a smart city project that you would like to finance, you should send me a note or send me an email at silvio@logoscapital.io. That's LOGOS capital.io. We need to be able to look at what are different ways to be successful, because one of us being successful will help the rest of us be successful. And it's really important that we work together to do that. One of these efforts that we've been doing here in Florida the last couple of years has resulted in a number of digital assets that I think could be replicated. So we are expecting to be able to show how business information modeling and digitization of physical assets into the virtual world can allow us to be able to replicate the kind of implications and benefits of tokenization, blockchain, digitization, cybersecurity, HVAC, whatever it is, into smart cities to really move forward the needle on this. Miami's been in the spotlight, which is a great news, being here after a lot of years of work and progress. So I think that maybe we could be one of the first successful smart city developments to serve as an example for the rest of the nation. But we do know we do want and need everyone's support to be involved, from investors to developers to technologists to advisors to government officials, especially, in order to move the needle. And so we understand the challenges that are needed. We understand the solutions that are needed, and we're here to offer both in partnership with the GBA.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Joshua, you want to make some opening comments, opening statements?
Yes. So basically, the key thing I will share with everyone as we look at smart cities and how they affect us, I think the bigger thing is that right now we have too much attention going to transformation with digital communities and not physical communities. So when you look at a lot of the opportunities, like, Ingrid mentioned digital identity, and Silvio mentioned finance, what we also have to look at is that because the majority of the world's population will be living in urban cities by 2030, are cities resilient and built to deal with the risk in real time? I'll give you a quick example. Last year, when the wildfires happened in California, where I'm based, the actual problem that happened was that wildfires in the Santa Cruz mountains and hills were not put out by the government or the local fire department. People from the Bay Area actually went out and sent emergency supplies and resources to support on the ground volunteers that are responding to their own neighborhood being burnt to the ground. When you look at people that are going to have to step up to the plate to help drive value in times of chaos, you're not always going to look at the same people that you would typically expect, such as a 911 response call that's in a first responder, or even just, the National Guard. Now we're starting to see civilians take action. So how do we equip civilians with tech-enabled solutions that AI can also bring value to, such as recommending things to do in real time? Because, for instance, some people do not speak the same language. So when you have a crisis and people are not communicating in the same language, Google Translate may not be enough. There's a way for us to identify these neighborhoods, communities that are high risk, and build technology-enabled solutions to embed in the local ecosystems. And these things can be done on a very granular level, or through mobile app technology, or through innovation.
FEMA already indicated that the number one most dangerous city to live in is Los Angeles. And it's not because of the pandemic and they have over 1 million cases right now. It's because it's at risk for natural disasters. Wildfire being one of them, climate change being another. So think about this. Los Angeles County has 5 million people. Los Angeles as a city has maybe over 500,000 people, but the county has a bunch of neighborhoods such as Compton, Inglewood, Crenshaw, and other places that are surrounding the downtown area and also Beverly Hills. So classism exists, redlining exists. How do we address these issues? Because resources, when you're in a certain zip code, are different than when you're in an impoverished environment. So smart cities can not only support the idea of innovating with machines, but innovating with people and increasing their appetite so that their cognitive response could be simulating real-time critical thinking skills that can use technology and data interpretation to take action on things. And that's where AI can synthesize data in a better way than people can. So how do we create human-computer interaction systems that will essentially relay information to people in a way that everyone can respond to correctly? And as we deal with more population growth, such right now that, for instance, people are moving out of the Bay Area and out of California and other places to move to places like Austin, Miami, and New York, the population size of Miami and Austin growing rapidly right now may stress test the local ecosystem, and it may also create a scenario where they barely have enough resources now to take care of the existing population. How is that growth going to affect the future? Helping governments and stakeholders predict or forecast outcomes and build new ethics through not only machines and AI models or even IoT, but really in just the communication silos that exist, not letting urban communities be the last to hear about something. How do you keep people in the loop without them being disregarded? And an example of this is what happened at the Capitol Hill. We spend over $750 billion a year for our military, but yet our Capitol Hill was sabotaged and seized by right-wing terrorists. I mean, there's no other way to look at that, right? Then we are blowing money on tech and resources, but if people don't take action, it's meaningless. If there's a catastrophe and people don't have the resources to maneuver and communicate, it doesn't matter how much innovation and money is going around. And we can see that by the social unrest that was caused through racial injustice, such as police brutality, with African Americans being murdered by the police. This type of stuff is creating social unrest. And we civically, as citizens, not only in America, but globally, have to communicate with one another and build technology and embed solutions that help, like I said, with human-computer interaction. So I'll stop there and say that my concept of a smart city is making people smarter with the technology coming into their neighborhoods and communities so that they're not left out. And they're able to also build resiliency on a local level and on a regional level and on a national level.
Great, excellent comments, Joshua. Thank you so much. And I'd like to sort of comment on that. One of the GBA members is a guy by the name of Kamea. He's got a company called IntelliNetworks. I think they're located out of Vancouver, Canada. And one of the things that he's done that kind of relates to what Joshua said is sort of decentralized law enforcement, right? Where communities can essentially police themselves by sort of self-reporting and interoperating together, and having those kinds of technologies that integrate with communities to help communities stay safer. That in some cases may deal with some of those discrepancy between resources and using tech to help with that. So. Yeah. George, you want to say something?
Yeah. I have a question to the experts and maybe from some companies who are here in technology and developing in a fine. So if we create a smart city, and for example, I like the idea from Joshua reshaping Los Angeles, for example, and we have 500 million people in there and the rushing is coming in. So only for traffic management, I will suggest that we need more than 45,000 sensors, and the sensors has a battery, and the battery must connect it, for example, for low power wide area networks or something like that. Is there a solution how they can recharge and how we manage how we do the facility management of all the items?
Well, but before anybody else responds, I do want to address one thing, and that is, as we solve some problems, we'll cause others, right? And so oftentimes we don't really take unintended consequences into account. But you're exactly right, right? I mean, putting together those kinds of things are going to put new demands. And one of the things that I think is so great about an open system like we have here in the States is when you have things that are too centrally planned, you tend to have breakdowns because supply chains can't pre-plan everything exactly. You need sort of that flexibility in the supply chain. So I think you're right. I don't have an answer for you, York, but I do think that we one of the things that I'm a big fan of is going slow, doing pilot projects, seeing what those unintended consequences might be, seeing what those additional stresses would be. But I'm open if anybody else has a comment on that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, sure. Michael Novak, I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself before. You want to introduce yourself, and if you have any thoughts, comments on the subject of smart cities, and then if nobody's got any questions, I'm just going to start lobbing some questions at our guests.
Well, thank you very much for showing up. It's time for us to leave. Thank you. It's about 10 to 7. Oh, so you want me to talk? Okay. So yeah, my name is Michael Novak. I live here in Arlington, Virginia. And along with everybody else that's on this call, well-versed in the technologies from the IoT. Within the AI space, I've been focused recently on conversational voice AI. But with regards to smart cities, along with GBA, it's been an area that I've been working in for at least a dozen years. Most recently, I was working with a group here in Virginia called the Virginia Commonwealth Transportation Board, where they try and organize the projects that the governor signs off on to ensure that they're distributed relatively equally amongst the different jurisdictions. And I'll leave it at that now because I'm looking at the time. With regards to IoT, I see that as well as being key, of course, to the smart cities, because it will allow things to work better together. From that, of course, I can talk into the digital identity of the things, which was brought up earlier, very useful. One of the statistics I just found this week is that according to one study, global smart cities market size is projected to reach nearly 650 billion US dollars by 2028. That's a lot of money.
Wow.
So the good news is, those people that study the data say, yes, there are projects going on at both the international, federal, state, and local level that are requiring that type of market capitalization to be available to make technology work for people. I mean, people ask me, what do you do? I tell them I focus on the practical application of emerging technologies for people. So, with blockchain, we could use that to help manage the IoT devices and have the governance rules potentially pushed out using smart contracts. We can use voice AI to allow citizens to ask for directions to the nearest bus stop, o si puede hablar español o francés o otro lenguaje, no me importa. The devices would understand you and be able to reply to you. That would be part of a smart city. Now, here in the US, I'm trying to move away from the term smart cities because it's become politically inconvenient, because there are a lot of places that are not cities. Their metropolitan size does not even approach a mid-sized city. So the term that's being incorporated now is intelligent communities. It may be only a word, but again, they're trying to be inclusive of, those people that live out in, Pitchfork, Virginia, someplace out in the woods versus those people that live down in the center of the metropolitan area. And I feel that's probably an appropriate term And then the one last thing I'll throw in, I get frustrated because I've been on several podcasts, at least last year, and they would say, oh yeah, you're Michael Novak, you know about blockchain, you know about smart cities, and you know about voice AI. Come on to our show, we want to talk to you. Okay. And the first 2 times I was totally caught off guard because you know what they asked me? They said, so you're the expert in smart cities and conversational voice, aren't you? I said, well, yeah. I said, so tell us, what's the status of 5G? And I really was caught off guard because, you know, outside of our circle, people do not in general understand the concept of an intelligent community includes a basket of technologies applied to benefit the citizens at large. So it's always become now something I try and bring up in my conversations, that keep in mind intelligent communities and the basket of digital transformation technology to serve the citizens is really what we drive at. And I see under the covers, guess what? Blockchain is going to be foundational to care, maintain, and feed and provide governance to allow that to happen. I'm off my stool now. Thanks, Gerard.
May I ask you a question before you run away?
I never run away from a talk. Yes, Maria.
In your example, why would you need that type of a tool to ask in many different languages where the bus stop is, when you can ask your smartphone the same thing in whatever language you choose on your smartphone? I'm a little confused of the example.
No, I appreciate that. So Mark Wasser, she gets one of the first coins to that good question. The reason I bring it up is that, you know, here in the United States, we assume a certain number of people already carry around these things in their hands. It may be true, it may be false, but the concept is from a municipal perspective, they want to provide that type of capability regardless of what you have or don't have in your pocket, you left at home, the battery's dead, etc. You know, do we expect to bring our own electricity to a building when we walk in? No. So currently, a lot of the services that are provided use the interactive voice response where I have to call up, wait on hold, touch the right buttons, and I have to be able to understand the language that it's talking to me in. So the idea is to embed that technology and make it part of the infrastructure.
With all due respect, but I live in Cambridge, and in Cambridge, and as well as in the metropolitan Boston area, every bus stop has the bus number and the time it's supposed to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not in any language, it's just mostly digits. You know, it might say the word bus.
But it's written down on a sign, correct?
No, it's an electronic thing that updates as you know, bus changes its location.
Understood. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, also, as far as you ask about the charging, we also have benches that have
yes, the Wi-Fi benches. Yes, I'm aware of those.
You can plug in and charge your phone.
Correct.
So I'm still puzzled, why would it be the first application that is either a lowest hanging fruit or the cheapest or the best usage of you know, either blockchain technology or the smart cities or the intelligent communities, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me kind of ask the panelists, right? So assuming my first question is, what smart city projects have you seen start? To what degree have they finished, and to what degree of level of success? So can any of our panelists talk about actual smart city projects that have happened? Because I know a lot of times we talk about things that are somewhat theoretical. So Michael, you want to go first?
Yeah, so the one, again, you know, it comes back to what we talk about here is certainly the leading edge. You know, this is not commonplace and everybody already does it. One of the more recent successes was in Kansas City, Missouri, here in the United States, where they said, the problem we have is traffic. This again, BC, before COVID. We have traffic problems. So they worked with the telephonic companies to allow them to put their devices on the telephone poles in the city. And that gave people access and visibility on the traffic patterns. And it reduced the number of cars that were getting stuck in the traffic, they said, by 20%, because people could look at the map and say, oh, geez, yeah, I see it, 5th and Main, there's too much traffic, I'll take a different way.
Got it. And how is that similar or different than something like a Waze app? Is Waze to a degree considered like a smart city type application?
In this respect, yes. And this is part of the ongoing conversations, is what extent does it need to be provided by the municipality versus a private company or companies that allow people to use it? There's no definitive answer yet. However, some of the criticisms that come up, besides the case of maybe I live in a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi, that doesn't have that type of capability in the first place. Number two, I have to have that Waze app. So it comes back to my identity. Do I have to give up something to download the app? Waze knows I'm using it. That's kind of crazy. I have to sell my soul to get access. Why can't a municipality provide that as a public service? Because their regulations, in some areas, it's not universal, are more transparent. I know what the city can and cannot do with my data. And there are elected officials that theoretically are responsible for those rules.
Got it. Kathy wants to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point off of what Joshua had said. It seemed to me that your point was that there's a lot of technology out there, but if it is not being used beneficially to the people of the city, I'm seeing a tightening up of the web. I would not want to be living in a place where I felt that the controlling web was against me. And it seemed that Joshua's point, that Joshua, you might want to, if you know, maybe an answer. It sounds like a bad science fiction movie where you can't get away from it. And what if for some reason it disagrees with you on some point, and there you are living underneath this web where you can never get away. You can't even go to the bus stop and it doesn't see you. And for some reason, it's against you.
Yeah. So I would just say that in terms of the statement you're making, we already seen this with the protests in Hong Kong that happened, and everyone wore yellow. And after they enacted that new security law that really essentially shut all that down, you won't see anybody protesting in Hong Kong anymore. And people are protesting because, the surveillance of Hong Kong would create social credit scores. Like if you let your dog poop on the sidewalk and you didn't pick it up, they could possibly stop you from leaving the country in terms of getting on a flight and going somewhere. They'll penalize you in other ways if you didn't have a consistent character in alignment with China. And when you look at now the change that caused in China, it has created people to just stay in alignment with China's interests as a government and as an institution. And people will still wear yellow, but they won't protest. And that's one of the things that happened that's prevalent before the COVID pandemic. And when we look at things right now in America, like I said, you're seeing that right now in local communities. I mean, recently, large produce manufacturing company in the Bronx went on strike because they want $1 raise. They only want to get a raise for $1. Their employer offered them 35 cents. Do you know in New York, people rely on produce to be delivered to bodegas? Now, this is outside of the fact that you got to understand that there's a lot of competing things for our attention at the moment. So the idea of a smart city, like I said, I mean, yes, it's valuable to have all this technology, but there's more innovation than adoption. More people are spending time on driving innovation than adoption. And that's what digital transformation speaks to, which is adoption of technology, right?
And then also,
will
what
you-
about the places that don't even have access? I mean, you're talking about the major metropolitan areas, but again, if I live in, out on a farm 1,000,000 kilometers away from the downtown city, that's not even an option for me. I don't have Wi-Fi.
Sure, no, I completely agree with that. And like I said, I was speaking from an urban perspective. Just that's where I focus my attention on. But I definitely understand in rural America. I mean, I was in Omaha this whole past summer, and I went into rural Nebraska and saw what people in agriculture are dealing with. And that, like I said, there's a lot of competing things for our attention. So there's no like single source of truth. What I will say is that, and I'm using New York because I think that is a good example of somebody that they implemented a metering system for their water because they consume about 6 billion gallons of water a day. So we look at in rural areas, a lot of farmers are starting to adopt, and people in rural areas are starting to adopt things to track like local shrinkage in crops and how to deal with their food supply because they have to rely on their hyper local supply chain. And I think that's another thing that again, essentially what we have to do again is help people deal with technology in a very efficient way so that it's not over their head. And that's what we're going through is cycles of different types of literacy. At one point it's about being financially literate, then it became about computer literacy. Now it's about data literacy. So how do you, like I said, help people interpret data and also, like I said, not like leave them out of the transformational aspects of it. So I'll just stop there so that
Let me sort of segue back to kind of where I was because I think that this is this kind of leads into my next question. So Mike, you shared with us a project that was successful. Sylvia, I'd kind of like to go to you and maybe even Ingrid, if you know about any projects that have been successful. Yeah. And then sort of to Joshua's point.
What was that, George?
Well, share any information about projects that have been implemented and successful. And can you hear me? And to Joshua's point, what about the resistors or the barriers that, right? What are some of the problems that may have been encountered, in terms of the adoption issues, right? So, they're kind of both sides of the coin. What's been successful and what kind of problems have you guys seen?
Yeah. You talking to me, George?
Yeah, you and then after you, maybe Ingrid, if she's got any comments.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that we've been very successful in basically galvanizing the community and getting community stakeholder buy-in to just go around educating all the different stakeholders that include the port, the airport, the trains, Uber, the politicians, the economic development agencies, so on and so forth. But I think the main challenge has been, I think also just like, how do you get everybody to agree, right? Also, you have like with all the private sector members and getting all these guys to agree and sign an MOU and a partnership to really formalize and galvanize everything, and moreover, to be able to invest into a fund that it goes to, or a platform that benefits everybody. Who gets in charge of that? What does a VC charge that? Does it not? So the financing mechanism has been basically a big challenge.
But I mean, that's also where the public-private partnerships come in. They put together those packages and define those rules over who has access to the capital, how they can spend it, and how they get their money back over a set period of time.
Yes, but the thing is, to get to public-private partnership, we've been trying to do this 2 years and we still haven't been able to and we've gone to the
I agree. I mean, it's not easy. I'm not saying, oh yeah, of course we forgot, didn't see it. But it is one way that's currently being attempted, and there are successes. I mean, there are companies and P3s that have been and continue to be successful.
Well, let's hear from Sylvia, because Sylvia has been actively involved in putting together this public-private partnership in Miami and has got some real-world experience in what works and what doesn't work.
But I just want to say, once y'all done, I'll let us share a use case that we actually developed. But continue, Sylvia.
Yeah, Sylvia, you're on mute, buddy. Mute. Sylvia.
Oh,
perfect. Okay.
All right, guys. Hey, sorry about that. Yes, absolutely. I think that public-private partnership makes sense. I think that we've tried looking, basically that inception piece is very difficult. And we're looking, I think the opportunity is going to be in finding alternative ways to privately fund the early adoptions of the first iterations needed for smart city and be able to figure out new revenue streams that go to feed the smart city projects to show that kind of initiative and traction. Whether it's a Department of Transportation build grant, which you've identified, Silicon Valley Innovation Program would be the most ideal. but they only make requests for proposals, which is very difficult. There hasn't really been a way to get aligned to like galvanize and push this initiative. It's been very frustrating in order to be able to formalize things. You know, I mean, we're basically just investing ourselves personally with our lunch money to
Right.
get this off the ground.
No, I'd
And-
agree. The inertia is not quite there yet. I mean, have you looked? I mean, other opportunities like things like the Jobs Act. I don't know what your opinion is of that.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I think you're talking maybe.
I'm just real quick. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I have my
Okay.
963 and
Okay.
I have securities licenses. The
Right.
Jobs Acts, I think that will most make sense, and this is actually the direction that we're going in, is figuring out how to create a safe instruments where maybe we can just get a guarantee
Yes.
from an airport or a contract from a seaport or a city, and then based on that contract, I could factor, or I can use purchase order financing overseas or locally, or create a new bond to crowdfund bond. To be able to do it. And I think that that's the way to go, right? I honestly think that that's going to be the path of least resistance. No, that's not true. It might not be the path of least resistance, but it's going to be the most effective path.
Sure.
Let me do this for a second.
Well, so money, I see Juan Cabrera says that money is their first hurdle. And I would say that actually having a real bankable project that's ready to go with stakeholder buy-in is the main hurdle.
I was going to say the political fortitude, we call them guts in English. That's the big thing. 'Cause I've talked to, you know, the mayors and I've talked to government officials. They're like, that's a great idea. I'd love to put in public Wi-Fi, but you know, I don't think my people, the public, they're not ready for it. And so, of course, you already know this. I'm sure, Silvio, as you go, look, let me show you how you save money and put it in your budget. So even if you get kicked out of office, the next guy who gets into office can't take it out because they say, look, we're saving $1 million or $2 million or $500 million. You're not going to take that out anymore, right?
So one thing I want to just mention real quick, since I'm mentioning this discrepancy on the procurement process with smart cities, is that one thing we did at WIASA Research Institute is we actually go and secure these smart city initiatives, and we have like 12 in the pipeline right now. And then I've been able to secure one so far in Carson, California, and basically we did that by partnering with a local nonprofit and essentially having the city sign off on it as a philanthropic move. So we have a foundation arm which we use philanthropy. So instead of asking cities for their money, we bring our own money. And a lot of big companies have put out their smart city initiatives after COVID because they realize governments are constrained with resources.
Correct.
So one thing, especially the GBA has is advantage of, and even nonprofits, is that if you can leverage philanthropy to secure buy-in, you can just go and raise your own dollars, right?
Right.
And I think
I mean, you're familiar with the MasterCard City Connect program. That's exactly what they do.
Yep, exactly. This model works in itself.
Joshua, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to Ross and Tara Sue Myers. They lead the gaming working group. They're also setting up the Government Blockchain Foundation, which will be a 501c3. And they're going to use charitable gaming and lotteries, but that's going to be essentially a way of getting revenue from a bunch of different sources to support a lot of the GBA projects for GBA members. Will be able to fund through Government Blockchain Foundation. So we're in the process. We're in the process of setting that up. That'll be a Washington D.C. based entity, and we're going through the bylaws and getting the process of getting registered right now. I do want to shift. I did say, Ingrid, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to do two things. I want to ask you the same question, right? What do you know that's been successful? What kind of barriers do you see in terms of, you ran through a lot of high level things on your slides. I'm wondering if you could maybe give an example or two. And then I want to turn it over to our smart economy chapter lead and talk a little bit about smart economies. He's got a couple of slides he wants to share. But if you can give us an example of maybe some success or some challenges, and then I'll ask Surya to share some of these slides.
Yeah, well, the challenge that I've been dealing with in my work with World Economic Forum and United Nations subgroups are definitely data governance and ethical issues. Because out of a desire to do a wonderful job for smart cities from a technology perspective, the faster you go and the faster you have adoption, unfortunately also the ethical issues become exponentially bigger and the data governance issues become more complex. In terms of success, I can speak to two that I've been involved in, and that both are in relation to healthcare, so smart operating rooms. I've been intimately involved with that. And they're, in Japan, they've made huge progress. They actually have fully operational ORs that are completely touchless, wireless, and have almost every single technology we've mentioned today. And then the other one that I've been only an advisor, so I wasn't involved intimately, but I know they succeeded, was with smart panels in Africa. So they were able to make a huge impact with actually very little money. But solar panels, they were able to really not only stimulate the economy there locally, but really improve the quality of life of everybody. So things that we take for granted there were very beneficial. And it helped education, it helped growing crops, it helped actually have light. I mean, it really created a whole ecosystem just by having some solar panels installed. So those are the ones that I've been involved in. And then the others are in progress, but not successfully deployed yet.
Right. And you know, when you talk about ethical issues, I'm reminded of the post that Ingrid put up. In fact, I'm going to drop this in the chat right here. And she put up a post about fines levied under the GDPR jumped almost 40% in the past 12 months as European
It
Union.
also help us be more relevant to what we can tell you about ourselves to make the most of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Surya, would you like to share a couple slides and talk about smart economies?
Yeah, sure, Gerard. Uh, Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity here. So, Sudhinath here from Stathion Labs. We are a blockchain-based company providing service in electronic invoicing network space. Today, I want to talk about our concept of smart economy. So if you talk about a smart city, it's again a big or a immersive concept where it includes a lot of use cases from putting IoTs in toilets to revolutionizing the payment sector. So if you look at the smart economy concept, it's very focused, and we can have a structure like associated structure to that concept. So let me share some slides with this. Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
Incidentally, while he's doing that, if anybody is interested in participating in any of the GBA smart city
I'd love to audit
activities,
that class if it's possible to learn what's on there and see what we think that could be practical. I think it'd be good to also
Sylvia, I'm
compare
going
notes
to put you on
with
mute, my
later,
friend.
since you're an active practitioner, within the wealth.
Sorry about that. Sylvia's on another call. Yeah, if anybody's interested in participating in any of the GBA smart city activities, I'd encourage you to join GBA and join the smart city working group. We may be looking for a new working group lead in that. So if you're interested in a leadership position in any of the GBA working groups or smart city, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me. Or Rob Perry, who's also on the chat. Okay, Surya, it's all you.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the actual definition of economy from Google. So an economy is defined as a system of making and trading things of value. So the term economy is always associated with the transactions and the trade that happens within the civilized human beings that participate in the economy to meet their needs and requirements. So then a smart economy is a system completely administered by autonomous digital networks for making and trading things of value. So essentially what really happened with blockchain, or what really happened with Bitcoin, is if you look at the history of humankind, Bitcoin is actually the uh, first evolution of technology that actually provides freedom to human beings to represent and transact value by their own. So if we look at the development that actually happened after that, especially with respect to smart contract, and in the last phase, we are seeing the emergence of DeFi, which actually simulate a lot of traditional banking aspects that we were unable to think without an intermediary or a bank. So what we emphasize with a smart economy is how we are able to facilitate a trade transaction which involves always two things. First thing is the exchange of value using either a banking network or either using fiat currencies or either using cryptocurrencies, and simultaneously an exchange of the data that is associated with the trade. So these are the two things that we are mainly looking with smart economy as a fundamental principle. How we can make these two exchanges smart with making use of the modern technology. And what we have find out is, so the smart economy as a concept, we can place four pillars to the smart economy. So the first pillar will be an secure encrypted trade data network that will be the backbone of every other transactions in the digital space, where we are building a blockchain based file storing network to handle intercompany or customer to trader trade data exchange on a real time basis. And essentially we know the importance of crypto based payments and settlements. Recently for the US banks are allowed to do settlements with themselves using Bitcoin or other private currencies, cryptocurrencies. So the adoption is happening, and crypto is inevitable in the payment and settlement space. So we try to uh, digitalize the cash handling process using softwares, and that resulted in our traditional banking network. So the next evolution is crypto, and we have to make way for the crypto adoption in our business, like in our MSMEs, so that they adopt payment in cryptocurrencies. And the other interesting thing is smart regulatory complaints. So the way that we do regulatory complaints, or the process that we follow for doing our regulatory complaints like taxation and all other regulatory complaints, is still 600 years old. That means we are still following a very old paper based system to administrate our complaints process. That is going to entirely reinvented by the new generation of technology. And the last thing is, the last pillar is, so if you look at the traditional banks, what they are doing is they are not just helping business or helping individuals to represent their value and transact their value. The additional service that they are providing is they actually provide loans to business houses to start a business and establish, or even cater to their working capital needs. So apart from just holding our money, bank is doing a extra thing of providing credit facilities to our MSMEs. If you look at what really happened with COVID is, the MSMEs are the ones who got affected the most or injured the most with the COVID pandemic, and they are in dire need of working capital requirements. And there's a recent development happening in US. There's a movement is happening. The name of that movement is Bar Stool Fund. So what they are trying to do is, the human beings from different part of the world, they are coming together and they are putting a fund, so that a fund administrator can actually help business, small and medium scale business in need, who are who suffering from this pandemic or from the cash flow issues, to survive these hard times. So but from our perspective, smart economy is not just a fancy word that we can use as a marketing jargon. We believe that smart economy is much needed to navigate our post pandemic situations, post pandemic economies, to make the civilization without even relying on a centralized party, centralized business, or centralized corporations, centralized governments, to run our necessary thing, to run our the trade aspect, that which will be the necessary aspect of every civilization, every community. So I just want to have a quick look into how we are doing it. So we as a platform provide a way for business guys to accept payments in cryptocurrencies. So this is to ensure 100% control. We are always facing, and we recently faced a dramatic situation with respect to privacy. And it's not just with our data, social data privacy, but it is always with our payment data privacy, where transactions are being monitored to analyze the purchase behavior and purchase capacity of every individual, and that needs to be eliminated from the system. So the smart economies should enable individuals as well as business to transact their value without being monitored by external third party interference. So that's the first thing, that's the first pillar that we are focusing on. The second one is secured encrypted trade data network. So we may wonder, like, after the inception of email, like after 60 or 70 years, we are still using email for our confidential data transfer, like invoice, like purchase order. So if you look at the vulnerability associated with emails, that is so huge. And a smart economy or a modern economy cannot afford all these vulnerabilities that is attached to the email. So we need a robust and open data oracle kind of network, which runs on cryptography and which act as a oracle network for decentralized identity protocols and all other protocols to facilitate the value transfer. So the third pillar that we are focusing is smart regulation. So think about a future where we don't have to file our tax returns to pay our VAT or GST. How beautiful it is! Like we are still, as I mentioned you before, we are still following a 600-year-old process. We just digitalize the process. We never reinvented the process in a pure digital way. We just digitalize the process of tax computation and preparing the tax returns and filing the tax returns over a in computer. Before invention of the computer, we have to go to the, or the chartered accountants have to go to the tax office and manually submit the paper documents. Right now we have computer and internet, we are submitting the same documents in the same format over a computer. There is just digitalization happens over the time, but not the reinvention of the process. So the smart regulatory compliance will play out in such a way that, especially in case of taxation, that is the attached aspect of economy, because whenever a transaction happens, there's always a tax consequence, and that tax consequence should be beared by the payee, and that should be informed to the regulatory bodies. So we should think about smart cities in such a way that the smart regulatory aspect should be within the ecosystem. It should not be integrated through an API, or it should not be standalone. It should be integrated within the ecosystem, so that when we execute a transaction, the regulatory aspect should also be covered. So essentially, moving from a post transaction reconciliation complaints to real time complaints. So that is the other pillar that we are looking at for a smart economy, that is smart regulatory compliance. And the last one is the most revolutionary aspect of a smart economy.
Still there? Oh, I think we lost your sound. 3A? All right, well, not sure. So Surya really brings to light a whole bunch of different aspects. And so what we talked about so far is there's the issue of financing a smart city project, right? How do you get it off the ground? You definitely need you need something that's going to bring some money in, right? And we talked about a lot of the technology that can connect things together, in terms of traffic and smart operating rooms and stuff like that. And then you've got the transaction flow within a smart city, right? So Surya was referring to a lot of that as a smart economy, but smart economy also brings in other stuff like local economic processes, right? Paying your taxes and stuff like that. So when we talk about the issue of smart city, Jimmy Crickets, man, there's just so many aspects of it. It's pretty wild. I would love for the GBA to adopt a smart city project, maybe coming out of this working group. If anybody has any thoughts or ideas about something we could adopt as a global organization, I'd love to hear about it. At this point, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask either any of the panelists or any of the anybody who's on the call? Jovan. All right. Surya, are you back? Apparently you are not back yet. All right. So Ingrid, if somebody wanted to interact with some of the smart projects that that you're involved in, what would be some ways that they could interact with you?
Well, we're gonna reignite the smart city working group with Claudio and hopefully I think Robert as well. So I think he's gonna send the communication. So I was hoping to channel most of our efforts in that working group so that we can keep track. And then on the international level, you can just email me because we will have very soon the International World Smart City project launch where we are hoping to engage startups and scale-ups that are interested in engaging in smart city development. So both. Email me, that's the best.
So Ingrid, could I ask you a quick question? Since you are the ethics officer for GBA, what would your response be to smart cities will get so much control over the citizens that live there? How is it that citizens can protect themselves against some sort of smart city programming that is against them for whatever reason?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of, like we talked a little bit earlier, of appropriately setting up what we call proactive data governance and citizens to be able to opt in and out. You need to give it the same conversation like we have with everything else in terms of devices. So it takes a lot of planning. And I think we mentioned also earlier the fact that citizens have to own the data that's being generated in this. But it's not an easy one. And as you know, in different markets, it's going to be way more complicated. There are countries that have done a better job at that, and they allow citizens to opt in and out. So if you want to be part of the grid, so to speak, in a smart city, you can, but if you don't want to, you can opt out of it. But I think that's the biggest challenge we're going to face, because even now, as we know, with all the safeguards we put in place, there's still a lot of ways to circumvent those. So I think cyber ethics, in my mind, is probably on the highest areas of concern.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I haven't heard from Claudio, so we should schedule a call because my understanding from our last conversation was he was very busy, sort of traveling the world. So
he just emailed me today, like 15 minutes before this. He's able to rejuvenate and re-get involved now.
Oh, excellent, excellent, yeah. Good.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so Rob Perry will definitely be in touch with you. If you're interested in getting involved in the Smart City Project, go to gbaglobal.org/working-groups. Right, there's the Smart City thing. All you got to do is hit View Group to join that group. So, well, I tell you what, if nobody else has any questions, it's about 7:30. I'm totally good with winding it down. Does anybody have any final thoughts, questions that they want to ask before we drop off? All right. Well, I want to thank you all. Kathy, did you want to say anything about the event? Just let people know kind of what we're thinking, and then also I just want to show them the event list.
Which event are you talking about?
The big event. You want to just share with them a little bit about what we're thinking?
Yes. So we do have a big event planned for May, but we are now. We're going to push it to the fall. The only question now is whether it will be the week of September 20th or the week of September 27th. And I believe that we will probably move it to the week of September 27th because the UN General Assembly will be going on the previous week. And we might get some overlap in attendees from that. But this is going to be a week-long event filled with all sorts of different happenings, day and night, accumulating in 2 final days at the US Capitol, Thursday and Friday, which is called the Future of Money Governance and the Law. And we have secured the former comptroller of the office of the OCC, the comptroller of the currency.
Yep.
So he has stepped down as of January 14th, and his office contacted me, and he will be speaking at the Future of Money Governance and the Law for the GBA event. We just have to secure exactly which week we're going to, which will be in September.
Yeah, and then we also have SEC folks coming. We'll have folks there from the UN, from the World Bank. And we're going to have from London, the chief blockchain architect from the London Stock Exchange. It's going to be a powerhouse event. As far as our regular calendar, if you just go to GBA Global under events, right, you'll see all kinds of events we have coming up, including our training and stuff like that. If there's anything we can do, by all means, please give me a blood curdling scream. So Dr. Raj Singamani is ready to sign up for the event. Awesome. So, all right, if anybody needs anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you. But if nobody else has got anything, then have a great afternoon, evening, and we'll see you guys all soon.